Today we are going to talk about factoring expressions to generate equivalent expressions. So we're thinking about that idea of the distributive property. So when we have the distributive property, we can distribute an outside factor to a group, so to the parts of the group individually. We can do that with all numbers, we can do that with all variables, we can do that with a mixture of both. This allows us to get a more simplified form. Here, we're starting with that expanded form and working back into that factored form. So it's sort of the reverse here. To do that, we want to take a look at each part of our expression and see which numbers, which values, which variables each part has in common that we can then pull out. For example, here, each of these is divisible by 3. So I pull that 3 out. I divide 21 by 3, and that gets me 7. Divide 6 by 3 gets me 2. And then we've broken it back down into that factored form. Let's take a look at the algebraically. So if we start with our AB plus AC, we need to ask ourselves, what do those two terms have in common? Well, they each have an A. So I take that A, I pull that A out and place it outside of the parentheses. And then inside the parentheses, what's left is that B plus C. Okay, so let's try it with actual problems here. So we've got 6x and 30. If we don't have a symbol here, we're going to assume that it's adding. So we need to determine what goes into both of those numbers. One way that we can do that if we don't see something off the bat is write out our factors. So I've got 6 and 30 because I want it to be the greatest factor that they have in common. I don't want to just pull out 2 and call it a day. I want this to be as factored as possible. So I can go ahead and write down my factors. So my factors of 6 are 1, 2, 3, and 6. My factors of 30 are 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 10, 15, and 30. So now here I pick out that greatest common factor, which would be 6. That 6 is going to be outside of my parentheses. That's what I'm going to pull out of my expression. Now I need to determine what stays inside the parentheses. So I say, okay, 6x divided by 6 leaves me with x alone. And then 30 divided by 6 is 5. So now this, remember this top part is in a group inside those parentheses. So now I've got 6 outside. That's what I pulled out. And then I'm left with x plus 5 inside of my parentheses. Now with this area model, now I can go back and double check, right? I say, okay, 6 times x should be 6x. And then 6 times 5 should be 30. And that matches my inside of my box, so I know I've done it correctly. Going from factored form to expanded form and back and forth like that will allow me to check my work to make sure I've done it correctly. Let's try one more area model here. We've got 18x and 42. So again, I'm going to go ahead and write out my factors so I can find the greatest factor they both have in common. 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, and 18 are the factors of 18. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 14, 21, and 42 as factors for 42. Now again, this time our greatest common factor will be 6. So that 6 shoots to that outside. We're pulling it out of our expression now. That goes outside of our parentheses. Now, 18 divided by that 6 will leave me with 3x. 42 divided by that 6 will leave me with 7. So inside my parentheses, I have 3x plus 7. Now to check my work, 6 times 3x is 18x, and 3 times 7 is 42. This matches my inside, so we're good to go. Let's try 2 without the area models. All right, let's take a look here. We've got 4x plus 16. Now I can still write out my factors, 4 and 16. My factors of 4 are 1, 2, and 4. The factors of 16 are 1, 2, 4, 8, and 16. Now, 4 is my greatest factor that they both have in common, my GCF. So that's what goes outside of my parentheses. Now I need to divide. 4x divided by 4 leaves me with x alone, or 1x. And then 16 divided by that 4 leaves me with 4. Now I can check my work by doing the math. 4 times x leaves me with 4x, and 4 times 4 leaves me with 16. These match. I can go back and forth between the two, so I am good to go. We've got one more example here. 21x plus 9. I want to factor that out. So again, I can write out my list of factors. For 1, I've got 1. For 21, I have 1, 3, 7, and 21. And then for 9, I have 1, 3, and 9. The greatest factor that they both have in common is 3. So the 3 goes outside of my parentheses. 21x divided by 3 leaves me with 7x. 9 divided by 3 gives me 3. So now to check my work, I can say, well, what's 3 times 7x? That does leave me with 21x. And 3 times 3 is 9. So I'm determining what the greatest common factor is, pulling that out, dividing, and getting my factored form. One tip is to make sure you do not lose sight of your variables. If you have variables in your expanded form, they must travel with you to the factored form. Sometimes you might even pull the x out. The x might be outside of your parentheses.